Hey there, Bible buddies. I've got another Bible review for you today. And this one is the Holman Rainbow Study Bible in the NIV translation. Now, if you guys haven't heard of the Rainbow Study Bible before, it has nothing to do with any sort of modern political stances, orientations, or wokeness, or anything like that. Essentially, Holman named it this because it uses, and you can kind of see here on the cover, kind of just a little rainbow set of colors to highlight the biblical text based on certain, to kind of correlate to certain, themes and topics within the Bible. So we'll take a look as we get into it a little closer, kind of like what each color goes over. But let's get started, I guess, on the outside like we always do. So I will show you guys the box, and you can take a look and pause if you need to and read it. Any kind of information you'd want to see. And I have two editions here. One was one that I had purchased for myself, and the other one was actually sent to me on accident. And I'm going to probably give it to my son because he seemed to be pretty interested in the whole color coding scheme and things. Here, I'll leave it here for you guys so you can see some of the features and kind of what the codes represent. So it's kind of neat. It really gives like a quick visual reference as far as, just, well, kind of what theme you're reading and that sort of thing. And if you're one of those people who are very like color oriented, I know a lot of people like to highlight and that sort of thing. This is definitely a nice addition to go to because it's kind of done already for you, assuming that, it's kind of in line with what you're kind of thinking that you'd want to study. It is a two-piece box, just nothing on the inside, nothing crazy, but it is a two-piece box. I'm going to set this to the side and we'll get a look at the Bibles. So I do have two, like I said. And this is the one that I purchased. I guess we'll review this one and then we'll get inside on this one. But this is one that I purchased for myself, and it's a really neat, just kind of a synthetic leather cover. I forget what they call it specifically, but it does have a very nice like tactile feel, and I don't know if you guys can tell, but it does have kind of like a simulated grain, which is really neat. I kind of appreciate that, and it doesn't feel like, it almost feels like rubberized, which I really like. It doesn't feel like, sometimes you get like these fake leathers and they just feel like really weird, and I guess this is weird if you're used to that feeling, but this definitely has almost like a rubber feeling. I don't know, I think I like it because it's very grippy. We'll go ahead and take a look at the perimeter stitching there. You can see that it does have kind of a rainbow effect to it. It changes colors as it goes through. I know that's gotten very popular with rebinds lately. You see a lot of that kind of rainbow thread. And then I like this sort of design on the cover. I mean, obviously it is a rainbow, and obviously there are certain connotations with this nowadays. So, you might get kind of a sideways glance or something like that, but it's the Bible. Come on now. We had the covenant with Noah long before any of that other stuff happened. So on this cover, there's, the kind of the pattern. It's almost like, so these are like holes punched out of the initial kind of top cover, and then you have this sort of like, I don't know, whatever it is behind it. So it's like three-dimensional. These are actually like cut out of this kind of rubbery material. So it's kind of neat feeling, and it's kind of cool looking. It just gives it some depth. So it's kind of different and kind of nice. I like the kind of the grunge going on behind it. As far as the spine goes, you have NIV up at the top, and then you have the little kind of, I guess the kind of cross feel thing repeated here. And then you have the Holman Rainbow Study Bible in silver and the Holman logo. And these are not like stamped into the cover. This one kind of feels stamped, actually. These feel like printed, like pad printed. I don't know. If it's stamped, it's very like gently stamped. They're not very like, like heavily pressed into there. On the back, you just kind of have more of the same, that kind of simulated leather texture. I'm hoping you guys can see it. It's very fine, but it's just interesting to see that they simulated that. The other external features we have are red head and tail bands. Then we have two ribbons. We'll take a look at those in a second. You have a nice silver gilt. I don't have very many silver gilded Bibles, only because I don't really prefer silver gilt. I like gold gilt. I think in this instance, though, it's nice because you have like the rainbow colors, and I feel like the gold would kind of be maybe clashy with it or something. But usually I prefer gold, like red under gold or something like that. But silver is nice on occasion. This one is indexed, and we'll look at that in a second. I'll come back to it. There are two ribbons, and they're double-sided satin. They're kind of thinner ribbons, I guess. Would that be maybe like 8mm ribbons or 10mm? I forget. But they're kind of the narrower ribbons, not so much thin. They are double-sided satin. A kind of a blood red one, or kind of like a scarlet, and then a black. Very nice ones. Let's go ahead and look at the liner. It is a paper paste down liner, nothing too crazy. It does appear to be reinforced here. You can see a little bit of that reinforcing tape. Corner work, for whatever it's worth. Like I always say, weirdly, the synthetic covers always have very nice corner work, weirdly. I don't know why that is. Maybe it's just easier to work with than leather. Or maybe people are just nervous when they're working with leather. I don't know. As far as the tabs go, so you can see it is black for the Old Testament and then red for the New Testament. And there is actually, there's like 3 books per tab for each tab. And they're pretty nice. I don't know what it is. I do not prefer tabs whatsoever. I much prefer like untabbed. But for a while there, I was purchasing like study Bibles, and I was like, well, it's a study Bible. It has to be tabbed. And I don't know why I got into that ideology. But I like all my study Bibles, the majority of my study Bibles are tabbed, and now I regret it because I really don't like tabs. I guess I figured like, oh, it's going to take me a while to learn where the books of the Bible are, and it really didn't. So, I mean, a couple of them are, I have a hard time, kind of towards the end of the Old Testament, I have a hard time remembering where everything is. But yeah, so you can see them there, black and red, and they're kind of like a high gloss finish, and they have little gold letters on them. And then you just have other tabs for like the note section of the concordance and that sort of thing. So yeah, so that is this Bible. Let me show you the other one, and then we will crack it open. So this other one is another simulated leather, and you can kind of see the grain. It's got a little bit of a kind of grain there, and it's like maybe like a deep brown, almost like a very slight hue of purple to it. And then it's a very nice like forest green in the middle. On the spine, you have NIV again, and then Holman Rainbow Study Bible, and the Holman logo at the bottom there. And it's in gold this time, and the stitching is a brown stitching, but more of the same on the back. And this one is much nicer with its green head and tail bands and its green ribbon, which I like, and the nice gold gilt. And it's actually a very nice gold gilt. So you go Holman, and of course no indexing, which I think it looks better. It's a nice like slim presentation, especially for a study Bible. So I like that. And the green ribbon is a double-sided satin, kind of I guess another like forest green. So nice ribbon. So on this one, it's just a brown paper paste down. And there's the corners. We'll kind of go through it quickly as best we can, right? All right, let's get into it. So first page you have is a presentation page. Let me make sure we're in frame. There we go. So you have a presentation page. Then you have the Holman Rainbow Study Bible, New International Version. Get you guys in close there. There you go. Turn the page. We have the copyright page. There's a lot of information here, and they have been making this for quite some time. And there's been a lot of editions of it. I'm assuming it's because it's popular, but I'll go ahead and pause it for you guys. Or I'll stop so you guys can pause and see what kind of options there are down there. And then you can see down here, it was printed in China, and it was done by R. Donnelly & Sons, which is a printer that's out of China. And then I'm assuming it is the 6th print of 2018 is how you would read these codes. So not a very old Bible, definitely not. Then we have your scriptural promise for the Holman Rainbow Study Bible, right? God's promise to us is a covenant in full and living color. And then you have a to the reader section. And you have your table of contents, and you have explanation of how this works. There's a couple of pretty cool features in this. I mean, aside obviously from the color coding, right, which is pretty unique on its own. But there's a few other features which are kind of outlined here, and I mentioned it on the box too, but I'll point out when we get to it. Then you have the books in the Bible in biblical order and then alphabetical order, so like another table of contents there. Then you have a table of contents as far as your in-text maps and your illustrations and other maps in the back. And here is your color coding guide. And it's kind of neat because they do continue this at the bottom of each spread. So it's not like you have to keep flipping back here to see what the colors mean. You can see it pretty close. But there is a little kind of explanation. It's kind of expanded here as far as what they mean. And I'll show you guys that too. Might be helpful for somebody if you're interested. Kind of get a feel for what the topics are about, you know? I guess here it is by subject breakdowns. And then they give you some examples of verses on the opposite page. So pretty neat. And again, if you're somebody who really enjoys like a colorful, learning experience, this is going to be for you. Or even also as a quick reference, God's plan for salvation. I think that's awesome. They put that in the beginning of the Bible. And you have the Old Testament title page. And then you have the introduction to Genesis. Right, so at the beginning of every chapter, you're going to have the introduction. I'll show it to you guys. It's got a bunch of pertinent information there, very useful information. And again, it's a study Bible, but it's kind of on the light side, which is nice because it is so thin. But it does give you some good information to kind of run around with. I'm just not going to have like a full expository commentary or anything like that. But, for a beginner, it's great. All right, so in Genesis 1, here we go, the beginning of the biblical text, we can see that it's a double column paragraph setting. You do have what appears to be like a double line numeral for to indicate the chapter. And actually, we'll turn to the page before I get into too many of these. But you can see that there is a map, right, with a kind of some explanations of some areas that are on the map. and some verse references and that sort of thing. Again, you do have the kind of bar across the bottom that tells you what every color indicates. And then for for light gray, it's history. So we can see all of this is the history, right, of God creating the earth, right? The neat thing now that I was going to say from before is that if you noticed here, like the text is underlined, right? But notice where the text is underlined, right? And God said, let there be light, right? And God said, let there be a vault. So basically in the Old Testament and the New Testament, it's going to underline anywhere that either God speaks, Jesus speaks, or the Holy Spirit speaks. And I think that's super interesting, right? Because like a lot of times we don't really, I don't know, there's certain portions, like here it's pretty obvious because it says, and God said, or if, God's talking to, say, Abraham or something like that. But then there's other portions like in the Psalms and that sort of thing where like it's not very clear that God's speaking, but at least here it kind of highlights that for you and lets you know like, hey, this is God speaking, which I think is super cool because, I personally get confused on that sometimes. When I was new to the Bible, I used to get confused in the New Testament if there wasn't red letters. I'd be like, who's talking? Who's he talking about? He? I'm so confused. Not so much anymore. But again, for a new reader to the Bible, it's an invaluable tool, Yeah, so we'll turn the page here so we can get a better look at it. But essentially, yes, you have a double line drop cap for the chapter number indicator. There are kind of like running headers throughout the text here that kind of show you the different subjects of the area that you're in. You do have the beginning verse, book and chapter number, and then also the ending verse, book, and chapter number, chapter name up here. And then what else? We have the page references on the top middle, and then you do have center column references. Let me show you guys those. And there's a decent amount of them. I mean, it's not like your NASBs or anything like that, a full suite of 95,000 references, but it's a decent amount. So let's go ahead and flip through, and you guys can kind of enjoy the colors, I guess. We'll go ahead and get through to the poetic section in a second. I will show you some of these maps, though, and some of these entries. So it's pretty neat. It's got a good bit of information, especially considering the fact that it's so thin. I know a lot of times these study Bibles get to be like, 2.5, 3 inches thick, and it's just like, goodness. So there's another introduction. This time to the Book of Judges. It looks like there's another map. There you go. Yep, the map. Now these Bibles still are in production, so I'll post links down below. Not that it's like an affiliate link or anything. I don't make any money off of it. So if you want to buy it from there, cool. If you don't, no worries. Let's keep going through. We'll get to some poetic sections. The paper is fairly decent. It's kind of a rougher texture paper, which I prefer. I don't like very smooth paper. Sometimes it's kind of hard for me to turn. And this paper doesn't feel like not ultra thin. It's probably like middle of the road. But it does a very good job like mitigating the show through from the page behind it, especially considering how much ink there is flooded onto the page. You figure just about every line of text is highlighted some color, and yet there's very little show through. So here we are in Psalms. You can see that there is a poetic setting. They did not try and kind of reduce the orphans and widows, because here you can see a bunch of single word lines, right? So, it is what it is. But I'll show you a close up so you can see kind of the show through there. Even where the text is, right? And maybe it's the color that mitigates the show through from the other side, because it looks like, there's a little more show through here in the center column where there's no color. But then where there is color, there's very little show through. You can barely, you can see back here probably because there's gray or something like that behind it, but it's not really interfering with the text portion. It just kind of pops up kind of in the in-between sections. So super, super nice presentation of it. There are footnotes also. I forgot to mention those. Translator footnotes at the bottom. And it's going to be at the bottom right of each page. So let's keep flipping through. We'll get to the New Testament. Now, obviously, because all the words from God are underlined, it's a black letter text. I think for the most part, the NIV is black letter text, if I remember correctly. But also because of the colors, you wouldn't want to put like red text on top of that. It'd be too much of a clash. So that's probably why they went with the underlining instead. For the New Testament title page, Introduction to Matthew, like we've seen before in the other books, right? Another map, and then some explanations of the key places in Matthew. And then we'll kind of turn to 5 and 6 where we usually look, but it's going to be all red letter. But you can notice, it's going to be all black letter instead of red letter. But you can notice that everything is obviously underlined here for all the speaking of Jesus. So super cool. Yeah, I love it. This is such a great Bible. And I mentioned it to my son that I was going to give it to him. I have to do a review of his Bible. I forgot what I did with it. He's probably in his room, but I have to do a review of his Bible. his Bible, y'all, was a Bible that I got. He's a kid, he's a boy, and he's like, I don't want to give his age out, but he's a boy, and like, he's rough with his stuff. So I didn't want to go and hand him like a very nice Bible right out the gate. Like, hey, here's your first Bible. And then he rips it in half or whatever kids do. So I gave him one that like I had gotten for free. It was like, I purchased one Bible and I think they sent it by accident, a secondary one also. And they're like, I'll just keep it. So I gave him that one, and it's the NIV, also. And then he listens to I just did a review on it, the NIV Live. It's like a radio broadcast version of the Bible with like sound effects and music. So he listens to that. And so I'm hoping that he can just transition very nicely into this other edition of the NIV and then start learning some actual like factoids and things about it. He's very familiar with the Bible just because he's listened to that NIV Live so much, but it'd be nice for him to kind of start learning this sort of stuff and then start making some of the parallels and that sort of thing between like, oh, he's talking about salvation here and here and here and here. So then we have Revelation. Let's get to the end right quick. There is, next page, one more page, come on. There is the end of Revelation. Whoop. Weirdly, it ends almost at the bottom of the page. No, that always makes me laugh. You have a blank page, and then you have your supplemental study aids. So you can see there's a little list of kind of what there is inside. We'll just kind of flip through them real quick. Table of weights and measures. Know what God says. Ancient versions of biblical text. 100 popular passages of the Bible. I always love these. These are always super cool. 365 popular quotations for memorization. That's super cool too. I might do that with my son. I've been meaning to memorize more verses in the Bible. I know a few here and there, but certainly not 365 of them. And I do like how they have the color highlighted also, right? For these 365 popular quotations, so you can still get a feel for like what it's talking about. And you have your one-year reading plan, and February, thankfully, only goes to the 28th day. They didn't include February 29th, so this is the way it should be done with every one-year reading plan. And then you have a little Bible reading calendar, and I guess this is if you want to, just kind of mark off as you read. You can check it and slash through it. And I think this is interesting. They show you, I guess, you do a horizontal slash, I guess maybe the first read through, and then an X through an X to put for the second read through. If you guys understand what I'm saying, but that way you can read through it multiple times. And I would even dare say after this, if I would go through it again, I'd probably like fill in the top section, right? And that'd be number 3, and then fill in the bottom section for number 4, and so on and so forth. Only because like the idea is not to just like read through the Bible once, right? Obviously, if that's all you can do, then cool, kudos, awesome. But really, you should be in God's Word every day. You should be reading through the Bible multiple times. So there should definitely be some options to like mark it through multiple times, because you should be reading the Bible multiple times, right? Let's keep going. There's your calendar still, and there's a harmony of the Gospels. We see that a lot in Holman. A lot of these things are seen, like I said, a lot in Holman Bibles, which is nice to see that consistency. And I do appreciate having this stuff in the back of Bibles. It's always weird to me when it just ends at Revelation 22. I mean, I guess sometimes that's cool, but like it's always weird. I'm like, you're missing something. Is there going to be more back here? Then there's an introduction to the NIV Concordance. I will show you some of the entries there. I believe that's it, with the exception of the maps. So we'll kind of thumb through it. Look, some line paper. Oh, sneaky, sneaky. All right. So there's the end of your concordance. Then you have the art credits. Kind of neat. Then you have personal study notes, and this is super awesome again because this is a study Bible, and if it's your beginning Bible, you're probably going to have some notes to take. But there's several sheets of lined paper here, and it kind of looks like they maybe finished off the signature with this nice ruled paper. I appreciate that very much. Then you have your maps, and these are kind of standard for Holman. Very nicely done maps. Subdued colors without being pastels, and I don't mind this kind of coloration. It's not too crazy. And I always love the 3D stuff. Super cute. Yep. I'll show you this last one. For Paul's Missionary Journeys. You've probably seen something similar to this. Then there's just the end sheet. It kind of wraps up. I wish there was maybe 1 or 2 extra pieces, but, you know, it is what it is. Ugh. So, the Rainbow Holman Study Bible. Let's go ahead and get some measurements on it. It is just over 9.5 inches long by just over 6.5 inches wide, and just over 1 inch, right? And just over an inch and a quarter, So just over each of them by like 1/16 of an inch. So yeah, let's take a look at the measurements for the text. Let me get a Sharpie in here too. I have one off to the side, but it was so crammed up at the beginning, just for reference, so you guys can kind of see, how big this Bible is. The universal Sharpie, as opposed to pulling out a Pit Minion that people might not have, right? All right, uppercase. Let's start with M in many. And it looks like a pretty decent size. It's about a 10-point font for the uppercase versus Times New Roman. And then for the lowercase, we'll do the M in much right here. Yeah, and I guess they're using something similar to like the Comfort print font, because the lowercase is much larger. So the lowercase is about an 11.5-point font for the lowercase. So I always go with the lowercase because there's more of it, but figure about an 11.5-point font for the lowercase versus Times New Roman, or for the overall Bible. Which is definitely a great size. And it really wows me, right? Because you have, it's a double column paragraph, right? And you have your center column references, you have footnotes, you have your, introductory stuff for each book of the Bible. Then you have your maps, and you have a bunch of helps in the back. And it's just crazy to me that it's so thin, right? Very portable. Not much bigger than like what a normal Bible you would expect from a normal Bible. Not to mention too, the paper has to be decent, I guess, if you're getting so little show through. But definitely a great addition. Like I said, if you guys are interested, I'll put some links down below, assuming they make these. If not, I'll just point you to kind of the generic Holman Rainbow Study Bible page. Bible buddies, if you could please like, comment, subscribe. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to leave them down below. Until next time, bye.